Welcome back to another episode of the CBS Sports College Football Pick Show. We have a playoff preview edition of the show, and I am joined by my guy, Beanie Wells, former Ohio State legend. Let's get into it, Beanie. College football playoff, Alabama and Oklahoma. It is a rematch of a game played earlier this season in Tuscaloosa. In that game, if you look at the box score, you'd be pretty surprised that Alabama lost that game, quite frankly, nearly doubled up the Sooners in yards and play count, but it was the turnovers that eventually did them in that game. OU had 3 turnovers in that game, including a pick six to turn the tide, so to speak, and Oklahoma won the game 23-21. Before we get into it, Beanie, I don't know if this has ever happened in your college career, even though obviously it happened when you were a pro. What is it like just to play a team a second time during a season?
It was hard. It's hard. I mean, obviously, they get another opportunity to kind of game plan for you. They felt you off that first game, so they know what your tendencies. They know what you like to do. They know who your marquee guys are. So it's always difficult to prepare for a team twice because they got a feel for you nonetheless. But, this one, I can't wait for this matchup. I know it's going to be exciting. I can't wait to see what wrinkle they decide to throw at Alabama, considering the last game, they didn't have their best outing on the offensive end. We did see John Mateer come back into that game after being injured a number of weeks and not look like himself. So is he healthy enough in this ball game to be the top tier John Mateer, in which we all came to love at the beginning of this football season? I know everybody had, high hopes for him potentially being in New York, maybe hoisting the Heisman Trophy. Got injured, banged up, but nonetheless, his team is in prime position right now in the college football playoff.
Yeah, Beanie, we got to talk about this Alabama team and the form that they come into the college football playoff with, right? In October, they reel off those 4 wins in a row, about as impressive as any team had. They beat Georgia, they beat Vandy, they beat Missouri with Bo Prabula, and then they beat Tennessee. And you think, all right, well, this Alabama team has washed away that Florida State loss. They're a completely different team, hottest team in the country, certainly the hottest team in the SEC at the time. And then, quite frankly, they clunked to the finish, and it started with the first Oklahoma game in November. They played an FCS team. They played Auburn, got up 17-0 on Auburn, and then Auburn storms back in that rivalry game to tie the game up, and Alabama had to hold on. And then, obviously, we saw in the SEC championship game what happened there. If they end their season effectively with bookend losses to the third stanza of their season to Oklahoma, just what kind of taste does that leave in the mouth of Alabama folks in the offseason?
Oh, I mean, obviously, you're coming in as Kalen DeBoer, as a coach that's coming and coaching in the shadows of a legendary guy in Nick Saban. So already there's that, comparison, that natural comparison there. How is this guy going to get this team galvanized, excited, and able to go out and play and be tough like we've been used to? And it really hasn't happened. So if they were to lose a game in the fashion in which we saw them, go out and play the last couple of weeks, I think it'll be, more of the same. People calling for Kalen DeBoer's job and wondering if he is indeed the coach to get this team to the promised land in which they once were with Nick Saban. So, it wouldn't be pretty nonetheless, but I do think that this team definitely has an opportunity. They just have to clean some simple things up. When you look at Alabama, there's been a consistent theme with them. They haven't been able to run the football. They haven't had that identity of being tough. And I think that's something that Kalen DeBoer most certainly can change. And if they can fix those things, and most importantly, fix the turnover issues in which they've had, I think they got a chance. But nonetheless, if it doesn't happen, they will indeed be calling for Kalen DeBoer, because we know Alabama fans are some of the toughest in the country, and they have a certain standard in which they want their team to play at. And, due in part to Nick Saban and what he was able to do there.
Absolutely, Beanie. And you just said it. It was Nick Saban, right? What did Saban always tell us, right? The standard was the standard, and they have not been living up to the standard. A guy is joining us now who always lives up to the standard. My man, Emory Hunt, welcome in to the show. We're talking Alabama. We're talking Oklahoma college football playoff first round in Norman. Emory, let's talk about this Oklahoma offense and what we're not seeing from them. Oklahoma's not scored more than 3 touchdowns against a Power 5 opponent all season. They have been getting points in bunches from a very opportunistic defense. Again, a pick six the first time these two teams met, in a 23-21 Oklahoma victory. John Mateer, the hand injury had been kind of the prevailing storyline. He gets that midseason hand surgery done, comes back. he's still running the ball and trying to give them an option here. But, coming into the season, you thought Jaden Ott was really going to be the bell cow for them. That never really came to fruition. Mateer was asked to carry the load a lot on offense. And besides Isaiah Satania, they have not really had much of an explosive threat. You get the sense that Oklahoma's kind of gotten away with it this season. And look, they've gotten away with it because their defense has been elite so far this season. So I don't want to take that away from them. But Emory, you do have to mention this offense has not carried its side of the load.
Absolutely. And it's funny because when you look at Oklahoma, they kind of look like Tulane in terms of, them being able to play good defense, especially late what we saw Tulane do against North Texas. But offensively speaking, man, they're very one-dimensional. And John Mateer is playing a lot like Jake Retzler for Tulane. So I think because they can't run the football outside of Mateer's legs and they don't have a threat in terms of a passing game, it makes it easier to defend. And when we're talking about Oklahoma being in this postseason, it's primarily because of their defense. And the defense, you got to give them credit for being able to lead from the front. And hey, okay, if our offense is not going to be up to par, we'll take it from here and be the reason why we have success, the reason why we move on, the reason why we give ourselves a shot to go through this postseason. But offensively speaking, since the hand injury, it really hadn't been much of anything on offense from Oklahoma.
Do have to mention injury report. Running back Jam Miller for Alabama is going to be available. That is going to be huge for Alabama. As Beanie said, Alabama has struggled to run the ball this season. Jam Miller's an electric talent, but been banged up a lot this season. Also, defensive lineman LT Overton going to be out for Alabama. But Oklahoma gets R. Mason Thomas in this game. He is a game wrecker at edge. Ask Auburn, for instance, what happened when those two teams met. Guys, Beanie, I'll start with you here. Do you think, and this totals 40.5, so our friends in the desert are telling us a certain thing. How do you think the pacing of this game is going to go? Do you think Alabama, with all the offense that they were able to put up against Oklahoma the first time, do you think they can make this something of a track meet at all?
I don't think so. When you mentioned the fact that, R. Mason Thomas is going to be back in this football game, you most certainly have to worry about him and his ability to be able to rush the passer consistently and be able to be a consistent factor in stopping the run as well. So I don't think this will be a track meet. I think Alabama's obviously going to try to split them out, try to get the ball out of the hands of Ty Simpson very quickly. But I just think the pass rush of Oklahoma is going to be just too deadly to be able to make that getting the ball out quickly so effective on a consistent basis. We know what Oklahoma's defense has been able to do. They've been able to stop the run and rush the passer like nobody's business in the country. I think they're tied with Texas A&M with 41 sacks, leading the nation. So with that being said, I just don't believe Alabama's going to have enough to make it a track meet. Now, if they were able to run the ball effectively and be able to utilize the play action game, then I'd definitely say there may be something there to it. But because of that lack thereof run game, I don't think that balance is going to be on the offense to be able to disguise some play action, to be able to push the ball downfield consistently.
Yeah, Beanie, just for me, Ty Simpson has proven that if you can get after him with pass rush, you can neutralize him. That is the great equalizer for defenses. And we know that Brent Venables, with 2 weeks to cook, can bring some dizzying pressure packages at Ty Simpson. So he will be under duress, you think, a lot in this game. All right, guys, let's pick this bad boy. Oklahoma, -1.5. I'm taking Alabama in this game. I just think that Alabama, the second go around, take care of the ball, able to do enough to win this game and get out of Norman. Look, it's the third time these two teams have played in the last 2 years with Kalen DeBoer in the Kalen DeBoer Alabama era. I think the Tide turn the tide and get it done. Emory, how do you see this game?
I'm right there with you. I like Alabama, and it's funny because the common theme for these games that they've played under Kalen DeBoer have been turnovers. If they can just protect the football, they'll be fine. They turned the ball over 3 times last time they played, and they lost by 2 points. So just protect the football. And I'm gonna say the quiet part out loud. Ty Simpson has to play better in the second half. Ryan Williams has to show up at the start of the game and be there when they end the game. Like, show up throughout the entire 4 quarters of play here. And if those two guys can bring their A game, along with Jam Miller playing his 111, however healthy he is, I like Bama to win this one by at least 4.
I got to go opposite. I got to go Oklahoma. I think they get an opportunity to win this game again. I just think they're going to produce more offense consistently. They're going to have a healthy John Mateer. He's had time to rest that hand. And then their coaching staff has had time to game plan a little bit more to fix some of those wrinkles on the offensive end and be able to try to, push the ball downfield and more importantly, create some openings in the run game. We know on the offensive side, if Oklahoma's going to win, it's going to be due in part to how they run the football.
When we come back on the CBS Sports College Football Pick Show, we're going to take it to Saturday, Miami and A&M. Welcome back to the CBS Sports College Football Pick Show. All right, guys, college football playoff first round Saturday games. Miami and Texas A&M get us started from College Station. This is going to be an awesome game, in my opinion. Of the seeds 6 through 12, to be honest with you, I think Miami's probably the only, and I do mean the only team, which is sort of a tip to my pick, that could win the national championship. I think this Miami team is dangerous now that they're in the dance. Obviously, as talented as they come up front on defense, Keem Mesidor, Ruben Bain on the edges are a great edge tandem for this Miami defense up front. They've retooled some things on the back end, obviously, coming into the season. And when you pair it with that pass rush and then you pair it with the offense, man, they are a complete team. They just have to avoid the potholes that they have that they've fallen into this season against Louisville and SMU. Emory, Miami's had a couple weeks off. Obviously, they had all that time where they were wondering, were we actually going to get in? Now they're in. The committee's put them in. Do you think Miami has a chance to make a deep run in this thing?
I mean, there's always a chance, but I just feel like this is a bad matchup for them. When we look at Miami on both sides of the ball, let's look at it this way. All things being equal, A&M and Miami both are strong at the point of attack on both sides of the ball on the line of scrimmage. They both have tremendous playmakers that they go to when they need a big play. Miami, Malachi Tony, Texas A&M, Casey Concepcion. The difference is the quarterback. And which quarterback can you trust to rise above the X's and O's? And I think that's going to be the challenge here for Miami. And it was going to put them in a situation where they're going to make Carson Beck beat them throwing the football. And they're going to make him beat them throwing the football without using Malachi Tony. So he's going to have to use those other targets to open up things for Tony. And if he can do that, then yes, they do have a chance. And that'll be the best version of Miami that we'll see. And if they can find some semblance of a run game, a consistent run game against this Aggie defense, that's even more of a tip to your pick of them perhaps going all the way. But man, this is a matchup of teams that looks like ones versus ones. They are very similar in everything across the board.
Yeah, Emory, you mentioned Miami needs another playmaker to step up. This has to be a massive CJ Daniels game. Miami, about halfway through the season, decided that young man, Malachi Tony, that we have on the wide receiver core, he's getting the ball. And it don't matter what happens. He's got double-digit targets in just about every game the second half of the season. If I'm Mike Elko, Malachi Tony does not beat me in this game. You make them find somebody else, and I think Miami will try to find CJ Daniels. I also am worried about A&M's defense, I will say, allowing explosive run plays. They did it earlier in the year. Robert Henry at UTSA. They did it late in the year. You saw it, Arch Manning on Black Friday night. I do think if Mark Fletcher can get going in the explosive run game for Miami, Canes really might have something, but they have to stay out of long down and distances against this A&M front. Mike Elko, Beanie, is an absolute wizard at throwing sort of bespoke blitz packages and pressure packages on third downs. They're so good in third down situations, and we have seen earlier this season that Carson Beck, against Louisville, for instance, struggled when you change the picture post-snap. And if Carson Beck's going to come out here and throw 3 or 4 turnovers, this is going to be a long afternoon for Miami.
Yeah, that's the reason why I do believe that Carson Beck will have issues is because of how Mike Elko is and how he disguised different blitz. But more importantly, Miami doesn't have a consistent run game. And we know if a team is going to win the championship down the stretch, you're going to have to be able to run the football. You can't be one-dimensional. They can't set him back there and say, you know what, throw the ball 40 times and be that 80% passer that you were at the beginning of the year. It's not going to happen in the playoffs. Texas A&M is much too dominant on the defensive side, and just like we just talked about with Oklahoma in terms of rushing the passer, they're tied right there with first in the country with 41 sacks. They have a plethora of guys that can get after the passer, and Carson Beck hasn't shown that he's one of those quarterbacks that can stand and look in the eyes of pressure and not budge. The great quarterbacks we all know sit there, they feel the rush. Carson Beck at times tends to start looking at the rush and taking his eyes from downfield. I think that's going to be the deciding factor in this football game is Carson Beck and his inability to not see the football field entirely.
Emory, I think Miami's pass rush is going to have a very unique challenge with Marcel Reed. Like, there's a lot of people looking for the next Lamar Jackson. If you're going to identify one, it may very well be Marcel Reed. The way that they move, they glide through the defense, the way that they run, their speed. He's very reminiscent of Lamar Jackson, in my opinion. To me, it's going to be a big challenge for Mesidor and Bain, Miami's edge rushers, to keep contained, to keep a disciplined pass rush. Because if you let this guy loose, Marcel Reed will run all over you.
Especially with Bain out there looking like Danny Glover. He's too old for this, right? When you think about that's a reference to how old he looks as a player. Right. But when you look at Marcel Reed, that's the funny part about this whole matchup, that everyone watched them lose against Texas and forgot to mention that Marcel Reed got hurt very early in that ball game. He gutted it out, but he wasn't the same. Now he's had 3 weeks to prepare, and when you think about those guys on the edge for Miami, they want to get upfield and get to the quarterback. But versus a mobile quarterback, a dynamic one like that, you have to get push versus pressure. You have to rush to and then collapse around the quarterback. If you're undisciplined in your rush lanes and just flying upfield, you just open up a whole new pathway for him to just take off and run. And that's where he creates those second chance opportunities in the passing game to hit big plays downfield. That's where he can gas you in the run game. So for me, Marcel Reed being 100% is the true difference maker in this contest.
Yeah, for me, it's Marcel Reed is going to be so key, because I'm also wondering if they're able to kind of keep him penned in the pocket, Beanie, can Marcel Reed beat them conventionally over the course of 4 quarters? Obviously, that wide receiver core that we know at A&M that you mentioned is so talented. But can Miami find a way to make them drive down the field, rip off a 9, 10, 11 play drive where they really have to work for it versus hitting explosive plays over the top or Marcel Reed scrambling?
I think so. And the key to that will be them being able to run the football. That's going to be a reoccurring theme with me when we talk about teams having a chance to win down the stretch. You're going to have to not be one-dimensional. And, when we talk about Marcel Reed, at times his play has been boom or bust. But when he's settled down in the pocket, I think he's at his best because he can really see the field. And, I think his ability to be able to dissect defenses is vastly underrated. People see his playmaking ability and his explosive plays and say that's all he is. No, this guy can really sling the rock. And, with the right receivers, with Casey Concepcion, Mario Craver. I mean, he has some guys at his disposal, but they most certainly can methodically drive the ball downfield on a consistent basis. And when you talk about, Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor that they have on the other side, the fact that you got to chase Marcel Reed around the football field is going to be a tiring task all day long, which is going to make it tough on your defense. I mean, those guys are going to be gassed out there trying to stop him. And when they load up and expect that, and then all they got to do is turn around and hand the ball off at times, that's going to be a nightmare for this football team.
Fellas, A&M failed to cover in 3 straight games, at 2-5 against the spread at home this season, although they are 7-0 straight up. Let's pick it. I'm taking Miami to win this one, not just against the spread. I'm taking Miami to win this one outright, to pull an upset in the first round of the college football playoff. I think this Miami team is dangerous. I think it is talented. I think it is complete, right? It's a great defense next to an air raid style passing game that's got at least a decent and efficient enough running game to get the job done. I think I think Miami has a lot of different ways to win in this game, and I think they will. They've been sort of doubted. Now, yes, I'm a little worried if it gets into a close game with Mario Cristobal on the sideline. You never know what can happen, but I am going to take Miami in this game. Emory, how do you see it?
Man, you got to make Miami rap. You got to get them to go outside of Malachi Tony. And I think A&M will do a great job of taking him away. Carson Beck is going to hold the football. He's going to be looking up at the beautiful night sky or daytime sky of Kyle Field, because he's going to get sacked a lot in this ball game, in my opinion. So I like A&M to win this one. They're a more dynamic version, in my opinion, of Miami.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I like A&M to win this football game. I think it's going to be too tall of a task to ask Miami to slow down Marcel Reed. And then on the defensive side, we didn't even really talk about Cassius Howe and his ability to rush the passer consistently. That's going to be too tall of a task. And Miami is going against one of the more battle-tested teams in the country in A&M. So I got to ride with them.
That entire A&M linebacker core as good as they come in college football this season. All righty, guys, we're moving through the college football playoff games. When we come back on the CBS Sports College Football Pick Show, we're going to talk about another rematch, Tulane and Ole Miss. Welcome back to the CBS Sports College Football Pick Show. Fellas, second rematch of the first round. Tulane and Ole Miss meet again in Oxford. Different dynamics at play for, well, multitude of reasons. Let's take them one by one. First off, obviously, the 1,000-pound elephant in the room, Lane Kiffin's not on the sideline for Ole Miss. Kiffin has taken, I should say, his talents to Baton Rouge and will be the next head coach of LSU. Now, there are multiple coaches on this staff that are going to be joining him, but they've returned to Oxford for this college football playoff game, and Pete Golding is in his debut as permanent Ole Miss head coach. There's a lot of different dynamics in this game. Charlie Weiss Jr. takes over as offensive coordinator and play caller fully. Obviously, that was Lane's job. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how Ole Miss manages the game, just from an administration standpoint. I'm talking timeouts. I'm talking fourth down. I'm talking all these different things that Lane has kind of taken over while he was head coach and play caller at the same time, now fall to Pete Golding, who was previously just the defensive coordinator and frankly has had something of a renaissance in this job. He was not a highly thought of defensive coordinator coming out of Alabama, but he's gotten this Ole Miss team for the second year in a row to play really, really good defense. It does beg the question, the offenses that Ole Miss has faced all season, but Golding's got this defense playing pretty well with different parts from the transfer portal. So let's talk about the coaching dynamics here first and foremost, because on the other side, Beanie, there's also John Summerall, who's going to be the head coach of Florida, but he's been pulling real double duty here, both in Gainesville and New Orleans.
Yeah, so the interesting thing is, how are these coaches that are pulling double duty? How are they going to fare? Is John Summerall too worried about what's going on at Florida to actually put everything in this game plan? Because let's be honest, I mean, they're going into this game as the underdog. Is he just saying we're happy to be here in this moment, or is he really going to be coaching to win this football game? Can he manufacture enough offense to be able to keep up with the Ole Miss? We saw the first outing and how awful that showing was. What will he have in store for this matchup in the college football playoff? It's going to be interesting. Can Tulane get more offense from guys not named Jake Retzloff? I think that's going to be the key critical component for those guys, is to get other guys to step up and play complementary football on both sides of the ball. And on the flip side, how will an Ole Miss team that doesn't have Lane Kiffin look out there on the football field? Yes, they have some of the same coaches out there, but we all know Lane Kiffin was the pulse of that football team, especially what they did on the offensive end. And I know, Richard, we got into it a little bit ago about it a couple of weeks back. I still think Lane should have been coaching in this football game, but nonetheless, they chose to go in a different direction. But I'm interested to see how they fare.
Yeah, obviously we know that Lane Kiffin wanted to coach in this game, but a little bit of a different dynamic in how he handled the search process with LSU and Florida versus how John Summerall handled his search process with, among others, Florida and Auburn as things went in November. So, I think you understand why Ole Miss just said, thanks, but no thanks. You're going to, send your wife and kid on an all-expensive paid tour of the Southeast to case out other jobs and case out other cities. We're not going to look so fondly upon that, so you understand why Ole Miss made the decisions that they made. Emory, I know you're a New Orleans guy. You got the pulse down there. This Tulane team, John Summerall's not necessarily changed the face of Tulane because he just kept things going from Willie Fritz. Fritz had this thing going. He gave it to John Summerall when Fritz went to Houston, and John Summerall has continued it. Said in his opening press conference when he took the job that Tulane was going to be in the college football playoff under his watch, and he has paid that promise off, and here they sit. Yes, an underdog by nearly 17 points. We get it. We understand it. But some different dynamics in this game. But just kind of a little bit, what is it about John Summerall and this Tulane culture that has gotten them to this point?
They just embrace being the underdog. People act as if Tulane just started their program last week. I mean, they were one of the original charter members of the SEC. if everybody wants to, go historical. And since we all are already on the historical banter, let's look at 1998 once again. Tommy Bottom was a head football coach. He had the Uptown offense with Sean King. They were blowing everybody out, spreading the field, and they were averaging like 35, 40 points a game. And people were like, man, Tulane is doing something special. And they wanted to see them in a national championship game, I think that year between Florida State and Tennessee, or I think that was a matchup. And it was like, man, they would have, if Tennessee blew out Florida State, like, yo, Tulane would have did better than that. And Tommy Bowden got the head coaching job at Clemson. And so they had one game left to play with an interim head coach in the Liberty Bowl against a big, bad BYU team. And all Rich Rodriguez did and Tulane was blow out BYU. So I'm saying all that to say this. Tulane has done stuff like this before, and I'm looking forward to seeing how they attack this matchup, because while Summerall is embracing this matchup, and you saw the tweet that he posted with his picture of the dual split uniforms, like, I'm coaching 2 football teams right now. So he's leaning into it. Ole Miss, you wonder how many players are going to be out there. Man, if I play well, will Coach Kiffin come get me out the portal if I jump in the portal? Or so there's all kind of stuff going on in that scenario. But also for Tulane, they've heard all you guys, that play at these big Power 5 programs down and knock out the G5 program. So they know they can't. I'm not saying they're gonna win, but they know they have to go in there and represent really well before these big schools try to close out the door. So there's a lot of narrative and mojo that's favoring Tulane in this ball game more so than Ole Miss.
Yeah, Emory, I think there's some different dynamics here when we talk about the last time these two teams played. It was Trinidad Chambliss' second start for Ole Miss. We didn't really know what we had with him. Ole Miss didn't really know what they had with him. I reported at CBSSports.com back in September as Trinidad Chambliss really, his star started rising. Temple thought he was a really good player and took a really big swing at him last offseason, and Ole Miss kind of came in at the 11th hour and got him, but he didn't come in as a starter at Ole Miss. He was obviously behind Austin Simmons. They didn't know that they were going to get this from Trinidad Chambliss, and obviously as an opponent, Tulane did not really know what he could do, and they were able to dominate them in that game. I think there were some other dynamics in that game, like, yes, Tulane was getting beat pretty soundly in that game, but they get stopped on the goal line at one point in time. They have a couple turnovers on downs, and that thing really, really got away from them in a way that I don't necessarily think it will here. Also, that was early in Jake Retzlaff's time as well. And so you wonder, Beanie, with a couple months, and you wonder watching the film the second time around, being able to go deep into specifics matchups that Tulane may have been able to win or lose in that game. You wonder, could Tulane really turn the tide this time around, shock the world, and at least fare a lot better in the second go around than they did in the first?
I certainly think they'll fare better. I think Jake Retzlaff is a very good quarterback who's very competent, can do a lot of great things, especially with his legs. Anytime you got a quarterback in big situations that's a +1 in the run game with their legs, it's somebody you most certainly have to worry about. And we've seen him go out and have top-tier games running and passing the football. I mean, he's been sensational for what they do down there at Tulane in that program. He's gotten them to this point. He's been phenomenal. John Summerall, just as a head coach, and pitting his moxie on this program, and they're a tough bunch. So they're going to come out and play tough football across the board, but nonetheless, I mean, it's a mammoth they're going up against in Ole Miss. And, we can say so much about the Lane Kiffin situation and how guys on that football team may feel about that. But I think more importantly, those guys are going to be motivated and galvanized at the fact that he did leave them, because they are a team that has been able to win. They are a team that's been very competitive in the SEC. So they're out to prove something, not just to themselves and everybody else in the college football world, but they're also going to go and want to give that aha moment to Lane Kiffin. So I think this Ole Miss team is going to come out motivated and going to want to put up a bunch of points, and I think they will. We already know the pieces to the puzzle they have with Chambliss and Kewan Lacey and Harrison Wallace. Those guys are going to be so dominant in this football game, making a statement to the college football world.
Beanie, there's a point there that you just made that I'm actually pretty interested in. Do you think that Ole Miss's coaching staff, they almost have to dial these guys back? Like, is there a concern that they're so keyed up because of the point that you just made, that they're coming out trying to prove a point, trying to prove and stick it to Lane Kiffin and say, we weren't distracted? Do you wonder, do you kind of have to dial them back because they come out maybe firing too hot and they kind of burn themselves out in the first quarter of this game?
100%. I mean, if I'm a coach, I'm telling them we got to play with controlled rage. We understand that everybody's upset about everything that transpired with our coaching situation, and some of the coaches right now that are coaching us are going to be leaving, going on to what they think may be greener pastures. And you're out with something to prove, but have a controlled rage and understand the task at hand. Look, we're in the college football playoff. We're where everybody wants to be. Let's go out and play our game, in which we've been doing all season long, and not try to do too much or exert ourselves too early to where we're gassing this football game.
Guys, hard to beat a team twice, but both Ole Miss and Oklahoma are going to try to do that in the first round of the college football playoff. Ole Miss is the third largest favorite behind Oregon and 2020 Alabama in college football playoff history. We'll see if they can cover. Let's pick it. Guys, I think Tulane covers this. I think Tulane makes this a really, really tight game in the end, and they acquit themselves very well. Again, hard to beat a team twice. Second go around, you learn some things from the first go around, you grow and you build, and I think Tulane really acquits themselves very well in this game. Emory?
College football is so unique. The first half is about emotion. It'll be closer there, and then the second half, Jimmy's and Joe's take over. So that's where Ole Miss will win the game, but Tulane will do enough in that first half to keep it close. I agree with you. I'm taking them plus that 17.5.
Yeah, I'm got to go with Ole Miss. I think they're playing for so much, and it's not just about the college football playoff to them. It's about proving that they are a top-tier program that can win a national championship. And they saw their coach go on the greener pastures. They're going to run away with this thing, and they're going to cover, most certainly.
All right, guys, when we come back on the CBS Sports College Football Pick Show, the last first round game, James Madison and Oregon. Welcome back to the CBS Sports College Football Pick Show, fellas. Last game of Saturday, James Madison and Oregon. James Madison in the college football playoff because of the ACC's tiebreaker structure, allowing for a 5-loss to play for the ACC championship and beat Virginia, who looked like they were in pole position to be the ACC's entrant into the playoff. James Madison, all they did all season was go 12-1, won the Sun Belt, lost their only Power 5 game to Louisville way, way earlier in the season, back in September. It's an intriguing matchup, but we'll pick this in a second. But I think when you talk about how strong Oregon is as a team, and consider the fact that also, Emory, they're getting some of their best players back. Decorian Moore, game time decision. Gary Bryant, game time decision in this game. Also, Gary Bryant Jr., game time decision. So Oregon finally has their best wide receivers looking like, crossing fingers, healthy. There's just so much firepower for this Oregon offense that Dante Moore has been at the controls of this season.
Yeah, for me, when I look at these matchups, and that's a unique part of college football, where you just go directly to the line of scrimmage. Like all the skill players, all the skinny guys, that's fine, whatever, right? Let me see what that O-line and D-line look like. And that's the difference between Oregon and JMU in this ball game. Even though JMU has an athletic, aggressive defense that can fly around the field, even though they have a talented quarterback in Alonzo Barnett that can make things happen, a +1 in the run game, the problem is up front. And this is a bad matchup for JMU. And so I think that's where they're going to have to find creative ways to make some plays or play above the X's and O's. But at the end of the day, it's really about those Jimmys and Joes wearing that green in the trenches.
Yeah, Beanie, two quarterback system for James Madison, and you've got Alonzo Barnett, who's your starting quarterback, but then you've got Matthew Sluka, who will come in and give you a little bit, kind of that Tim Tebow, Chris Leak role from way back in the day, 2006. I'm sorry to bring up old bad memories for you, but I think that when you look at James Madison, and Emory just said it too, Beanie, James Madison's got to pull out all the stops here. I need the trickeration. I need the razzle-dazzle. I need the double pass. Even in that Louisville game, first play of the game, they try to run a double pass, and it was there for a touchdown, just an incomplete pass. So James Madison has showed a propensity to have some trick plays so far this season and a creative offensive system. They're going to have it because they're going to have to find a way to generate chunk plays against this Oregon team.
100%. I mean, you got to throw everything and the kitchen sink at, Oregon. When you talk about what they're doing on the offensive end, yes, they got some talented playmakers, but like you guys just mentioned, the defense and offensive lines for Oregon is going to be too much for this James Madison football team. So what do you do on the offensive end? You try your hardest to figure out some trickeration to get the ball out of the hands of the quarterback so quick into your playmakers and try to make the game a little bit equal. Now, obviously, the talented playmakers on Oregon's team versus JMU, I think Oregon obviously is superior, but nonetheless, that's where the gap may be closer than anything in this football games is with the skill guys. So you try to get the ball in those hands of those playmakers really quick, make them really effective. But nonetheless, it's just going to be too much in the trenches, like Emory just said. I mean, when you talk about the defensive line that they have at their disposal for Oregon going up against this young, inexperienced offensive line for JMU, especially in terms of going against top-tier competition on a week-to-week basis, I'm sorry. I just don't like this matchup whatsoever. I know that, we had a bunch of crazy situations that led us here, but I wish the committee and everybody involved wouldn't have done this to a James Madison program because it's going to be an ugly, ugly nightmare for these guys.
Emory, besides Fernando Mendoza, this quarterback class, as far as NFL draft prospects, a little lacking, a little bit leaving to be desired. But Dante Moore, if anybody's going to be QB2, it may very well be Dante Moore. What have you seen from him so far this season?
It's funny because he sort of reminds me a lot of how Marcus Mariota plays the game, right? When you talk about how he does, just plays calm. He's not really over the top emotional and plays a consistent game. You want to see him be a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more assertive. You'll forget that he could run, but he doesn't do that. And I think that's a situation where, okay, maybe now is the time to turn it on. So he's been solid, but I want to see a little bit more aggressiveness from him in this ball game.
And with his receivers potentially back in this game, I think you will see that aggressiveness so far. Guys, I think this is a particularly bad matchup for James Madison because Oregon takes care of business. They obviously have had multiple weeks off. I think Oregon has a point to prove that they can come back from the bye, that they belong in the college football playoff when healthy, that they can fire on all cylinders. You know that Dan Lane is going to be cutting wrestling promos. Can't wait to see the YouTube video from the Oregon YouTube channel after this one is over. Oregon minus 20.5. I think they cover and then some in this game. Never rains in Autzen Stadium, and Oregon at home is such a tough out for anybody, much less James Madison. Emory, how do you see this game?
Even though I'm a Sun Belt guy, and even though I totally am infatuated with college Sean McVay and Bob Chesney, I just feel like this is a bad matchup that they drew in the first round against Oregon. So I'll lay those 20 points with them, and he'll go out and have a great career in Pasadena with UCLA after this ball game. Should be done pretty quickly.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think Oregon takes care of business out the gate, and they run this thing up, and they are out to prove something. And I think, honestly, they may have one of the easier roads in the college football playoff, especially with this early matchup versus JMU. They take care of business and cover.
All right, guys, when we come back on the CBS Sports College Football Pick Show, going to hit you with some playoff blitz picks. Welcome back to the CBS Sports College Football Pick Show. All right, guys, real quick before we get out of here on a Friday, let's hit them with the Blitz picks for all the games coming up for you this weekend. All right, guys, I will start us off in the playoff game Friday night. I'm taking Oklahoma's team total under 20.5. I just am not going to sit here and bet on Oklahoma scoring a defensive touchdown again, nor will I bet on Oklahoma doing something that they haven't done all season, which is score more than 3 offensive touchdowns in a game. Now, if they do score 3 offensive touchdowns with 3 extra points, I may be up a creek without a paddle on my pick. But I'm going to take Alabama's defense to do enough in this game, and I think Alabama, frankly, will handle business in this game. Oklahoma team total under 20.5, my first pick. Emory?
I'm going to go over 41.5 for the total game, Alabama, Oklahoma. Reason being, this is a common theme for me in this postseason. The entire playbook is going to be open. It's a one-game season. Guys can get tense. Coaches get tense. Coaches get extra aggressive. So I think we're in for a lot of points in all of these games. So I will say over 41.5.
I'm right there with you, but I'm going under 41 and a half. I don't believe that this game is going to be a high scoring game. I think it's going to be a great game. And I do believe, sometimes coaches get overly tense and want to do a little bit too much in games. And I think that's probably going to be the case, leading to some mistakes and turnovers. And they're not going to score over 41 and a half points total in this football game. We know how both of these teams play on the offensive end. I just don't believe that they score enough.
My next pick, Miami, Texas A&M. I'm going under 48 and a half in that game. I think this is going to be something of a defensive slugfest in this game. I think both of these teams, particularly in the red zone on defense, are going to be able to clamp down. I think there are going to be some sevens that get turned into threes, so to speak, for both of these offenses. And I do think it's something of a sluggish affair. Give me Miami and A&M under 48 and a half. Pick Miami to win the game earlier in the show.
If you don't get to the red zone, then you don't have to worry about not scoring in the red zone, Richard. I think we see a lot of big plays from both Casey Concepcion and also Malachi Tony, but I just like this one to go over 48 and a half. Again, especially with these two teams that have some playmakers, I just think we'll see a 30, well, I'm trying to do the math, 31-24 type ball game help us go over.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Emory. Exactly. I think we're going to see a lot of big plays from these guys. I mean, if you want to watch a game where you're getting a bunch of offensive output and you're getting great quarterback play and you're getting a chance to see some of the NFL's future playmakers outside on the edge, and Malachi Tony and Casey Concepcion, this is the matchup to watch. There's going to be a bunch of points scored. Can't wait to watch this one over 48 and a half.
Next pick, give me Oregon team total over 33 and a half. Guys, I don't know that there's a number high enough for me. I love what this James Madison team has done so far this season, but I love what this Oregon team is much, much more, especially getting their wide receivers back potentially in this game. I think Oregon puts up points. I think they score, they motor down the field, and they leave no doubt. Remember, even in the fourth quarter, I think Oregon's going to be trying to prove a point in this game, so they go over by scoring late. You got some wide receivers that haven't played in a while, want to get them reps. Oregon team total over 33 and a half.
If you take John Mateer and put a bowl of gumbo in his hand, you have Jake Retzlaff. They're the same dude. They play the same way. They have the same type of limitations. But I still like the fact that they're going to find some way to points in this game. So I'm going to go over 56 and a half. I like the point Beanie made because he's, these coaches for Ole Miss going to be like, yo, and the players like, man, everybody's talking about Lane Kiffin. This is Lane Kiffin's team, his offense, his plays. Nah, we can coach too. We can play too. So I expect the points to be there. So I like this one to go over the total.
I like it to go over the total as well. And because of that exact reason, I think Jake Retzlaff and John Summerall will figure out some ways to score more points than they did in the first game. But then on an Ole Miss end, I mean, they're going to want to run the score up because they're going to want to prove that they can run a competent offense that is high octane without Lane Kiffin.
I'm taking Tulane team total over 19 and a half. Beanie just told you this John Summerall, Jake Retzlaff offense is going to be able to put up a fight in this game. I think Tulane's going to be fighting in this game, fighting late. And because of that, they're going to be trying to score late in this game. The Tulane team total is something I am definitely on tomorrow.
I told you I'm deep in these FCS streets here, right? So I'm taking Montana plus 5.5 against Montana State, their rival, in a game that could determine who goes to the national championship. This game will be tight as you know what. So I will say take the Grizzlies plus the points here.
All right, I got to go Memphis in this game. Memphis versus NC State. Memphis plus 3.5. I'm going with them. I love what Brendan Lewis has been able to do with this football team. I think they score a lot of points. And I know people probably sitting back. NC State hasn't been a bad team all year long. They can surprise a lot of people, and they're probably going to win this football game. But nah, slow down a little bit. Memphis is going to run this thing and shock the world by winning this matchup.
Louisville minus 6.5. Louisville minus 6.5 versus Toledo in the Boca Raton Bowl. Like that one. Toledo, obviously, Coach Jason Candle moving on to UConn. Give me Louisville in that one.
Jump the gun, my bad, Richard. I was going to say Villanova on the money line against Illinois State. Big fan of Mark Ferrente, the head coach. He's been there for about 25 years, and he is someone that's going to get his team to the national championship. They got two NFL tailbacks. Keep an eye out for that backfield for the Wildcats.
So initially, I was going to go Kennesaw State plus 3.5 versus Western Michigan, but we all know how that game's turning out right now. So I got to piggyback and go with Louisville over Toledo. I love Miller Moss. I like what they've been able to do. I think they are a competent offense that can really get hot, and I think they score and run away with this thing. Toledo plus 6.5. Oh, sorry, Louisville plus 6.5.
Great pick, Beanie. Great pick. Guys, we finally made it. College football playoff, postseason football, as good as it gets. Cannot wait to watch it with you guys. We appreciate you for joining us on this episode of the CBS Sports College Football Pick Show. I'm your host, Richard Johnson, for Emory Hunt and Beanie Wells. We will see you next week.